Welcome back to Undulations. I've had a Volca Bass for something like a year and a half now, and I really like the sound of it. It can do a nice bass sound. It can also be used for melodic passages, and I think it can also have some real applications in more of an ambient sound as well. And I've been very happy with it. But I've got a birthday coming up, and I've seen posts from a guy that I follow on Instagram of the Volca NuBass, and so I got one, and this is what it sounds like. There are some nice cool sounds that can come out of the NuBass, and the vacuum tube technology, let me just show that to you right here. We can get a close-up. I think that is some really good design and aesthetics. And so I wanted to do a couple of videos to check it out. My intent was the first video would be about sort of the sound and maybe some comparison to the original Volca Bass and some of the things from that didn't make it into the NuBass. And then in the next video, things about the NuBass, particularly along the lines of sequencing and motion sequencing, that are, in my opinion, far superior to the original. But as it seems to happen, this video kind of turned out differently than I expected, where as soon as I got started looking at things like the envelopes and sort of the very basic behavior of the NuBass, I saw just how different it is from the original, and stuff about MIDI. So I want to share those findings with you guys, and we'll get to the sound of this and some more about the original bass towards the end of the video. So let's dive in. This is Pip. He's been a very good boy today. So to start off, I think just for context on this, I want to talk about the original Volca Bass and how the envelope works on it. You can set an attack. There is a decay release, and that's an important thing to stress, that you can set. And then you can determine how much the envelope couples to the cutoff frequency. And there's a sustain. And you can also make the envelope control the amplitude as well. And so this is pretty standard stuff, I would say. It reminds me of what we were just talking about a couple of weeks ago with the Microfreak. Now, if I hit a note, I've got basically everything, no sustain, no amp EG on, so the amplitude is not affected. And I've got some attack and decay release dialed in. If I hit a note, I get this. Turn that up a little. I'm just doing this through my lav mic. I think it's just to get the concept across, not so much the sound quality at this point. So I'm just gating that. The way I've got it set up now, I am just gating it with the note that I push. Now, if I dial in some cutoff, you can certainly hear that. And so that's giving you an idea of the attack decay that I've got on it. And that is a decay, and it's just influencing the filter. Now, if I put on the amp EG, that'll sound like this. Instead of going down to sort of a low tone, it'll go all the way off. That makes sense to me. And then the key here is the sustain, which if I turn that on, now that decay time that I set, instead of occurring right after the attack, it occurs when I let off of the key. So that's when the release portion of the envelope starts. Okay? And the other thing is if you don't have AmpEG on, but you do have sustain on, then you can get a release, so to speak, but there's no amplitude there to hear it. So it sounds like this. No release. That's something that we also encounter on the Microfreak. So this just sort of makes sense to me, and that is kind of where I was expecting to be on the NuBass, but it is quite different. Okay, so what's going on with the NuBass on the envelope? All right, it does have an attack. It has also got a decay, not a decay release. So what that means is that that timing is always going to be right after the attack peaks. And then there is a sustain setting. And yet I feel like, and this is sort of, I don't know, I'm still trying to kind of wrap my head around it. I feel like there's an underlying envelope, amplitude envelope for the whole thing that gives sort of a slow roll off of the sound. And I haven't measured the time scale or anything like that, but we'll listen to it right now. I've got the envelope coupling to the cutoff all the way down, so that's not a factor. I've got the attack all the way down, and I've got the decay all the way down. And when I hit that, it should just be the gated note, but here, I'll turn it up a little. It does die out. And so that's a time scale that I don't really know what it's keyed to. There is an attack that I can set. I don't even have any of the cutoff dialed in, so there might be a sort of minimum amount. And then I can turn the decay all the way up. So you'll hear the attack and decay even though I've got the EG int, which is hooking the envelope to the cutoff all the way down. I'll maybe dial in the attack a little bit more to make it more obvious. Okay, and I can dial in more of that cutoff coupling. But even if I make things short, and I'm sorry if this is long-winded, but even if I make things short, it still just goes to that bass envelope, baseline envelope that trails off at a certain amount. Now, you might be thinking, well, just turn sustain on. Well, if you do, okay, I'm going to put sustain on and do it again. I think it changes like a cutoff level or something like that, but it still fades out. So I'm going to turn the decay all the way up, the attack all the way up, and sustain is on, and I'm going to hold the note down. And that just puts that cutoff decay on the other envelope, I guess the amplitude envelope. And so I'll turn it down. Anyway, and then there is no release, all right? So with sustain on, I can put the decay all the way up. And so that just gives a fundamentally different character to it compared to the bass. And so to recap, there's no release on the NuBass, so you can't get a sort of a ringing note. I get that. That seems like a design choice, and maybe for the acid bass style, that is something that makes sense. But I can't figure out how to get a note to hold, even with the sustain on. So I might even think my unit was broken or something, but I looked online and saw somebody else having the same sort of issue. So one thing that came to mind was trying to look at Korg. I was actually looking for a MIDI implementation chart to see if I could understand some other stuff that was going on with MIDI. I'll get to that in a second, but I saw that there was an update. So I did the update. And so I've got the latest update, and I still have this sustain problem. So, you know, maybe it's the way it's supposed to be, and maybe for certain types of music or genres, it is fine. But I feel like maybe I don't get it. I just sort of wish that I was able to hold a note for an extended period of time. Okay, so let's talk about MIDI. All right, so just to be clear, I'm using a Arturia Keystep to send MIDI out. I have it fanning out and going into the Volca Bass and into the Volca NuBass. I've tried this without the fan out. It's a MIDI Solutions quadra through, and get the same results. So I just want to clarify that that's not really a part of this. I'm just doing it so it's easier to show. Right now I've got the volume turned up on the Volca Bass, the original, and so that sounds like this. And again, you hear that decay. If you're planning on using the NuBass as a keys voice, it's not going to have that type of behavior. Okay, another thing is velocity. And with the original bass, right now I'm getting good velocity response. Okay, I'm going to turn down the old Volca Bass, turn up the new one, and see how that sounds. Turn it up a little more. Now, what is happening? This is our Arturia Keystep, my go-to keyboard. I'm using 5-pin MIDI, so there's no breakout cable issue. I'm not doing it through a MIDI host or something like that. And when I hit this, it cuts off. It doesn't even cut off with the same timing. Okay, but over here, when I play it on the touch keyboard of the NuBass itself, it should be a longer sustaining, not completely sustaining, but at least longer note than I'm getting here. So that has compelled me to hook up literally every 5-pin MIDI thing that I've got in the house, and we'll just sort of take a poll and see how that goes. Okay, and so none of this is going to be with the quadra through. And to be clear, like on the Keystep, I know that you can go in the Arturia MIDI control center and possibly make some sort of adjustment on the device, but it works okay with the original Volca Bass, and I've never encountered any sort of issue with the Keystep along those lines. So I don't know. But anyway, to that end, this is the Roland SCO2 synth. Got the keyboard for it, and got it hooked up by 5-pin over to the NuBass, and lo and behold, Roland works. And so is that an issue with the Keystep itself? I'm not really convinced of that because I've got other things like, this is the Craft Synth 2.0. Same issue. And then last of the keyboards, this is a Axiom 25 from M Audio that I got at a thrift shop. And I don't get it. And now here, I'm just going to use the Electron Digitact. I've got it in chromatic mode. The channel is going out to MIDI channel 1. I'm on the Volca Bass right now. Yes, it works. I'm going to turn it down a little. Can hold it down, but I'm not convinced on this one. Okay, there you go. Now, does that mean that the NuBass is unusable with MIDI? No, I've got some concerns about it, but I'm going to set something up with these two side by side, use the quad through, and drive it all from the SQ-1, same sequence, 2 different units, and let you hear that they can be quite similar. So here I've got an external sequencer, the Korg SQ-1, going through the quadra through and into both Volcas by MIDI, and I just turn the volume up. You can hear the original bass first. It's got a really nice bright sound, but then you can get similar, at least an envelope coming out of the NuBass. It's a little darker. And they even sound pretty good together. So that's kind of where I'm at on this issue of sustain, not having a release part to the envelope, and some of the MIDI stuff. I feel like that using a sequencer, as long as things are coming pretty quick and you've got maybe sort of a staccato envelope where it's a short attack, relatively short decay, that you can get pretty similar behavior out of the two devices. So now I want to leave the original Volca Bass for the time being, and we'll just do hands-on with the NuBass, talk about sound design on that and how it behaves when you're just acting with it directly. Okay, so let's take a closer look at the NuBass architecture. You got sound coming from a main vacuum tube oscillator, and then there's also a sub-oscillator that's based on vacuum tube as well, and this is where the tubes are. That comes through a filter which the manual describes as being based on a transistor ladder design, and then this is all engaged with the envelope as well as a low frequency oscillator, and we'll get into them in a little bit. And then as that comes out the other side over here, there is a drive setting and a tone setting to give some different character to the sound. I've got the cutoff all the way up and the resonance all the way down, and I'm going to just play a note. And I'm going to turn the resonance up a little bit to the middle and the cutoff down some, like that. And then add a little bit of the envelope and put some attack and decay on that, and that sounds like this. And to give you an idea about the drive, I can turn that up, and the tone darker. Okay, so that's sort of where we're at just from these modifications, but then when you start to add in the sub-oscillator, I'm going to turn up the level on the sub-oscillator, and you can see that here where the intensity of that blue tube gets dialed up also. And you can just hear that bite to the sub-oscillator. Then there's a saturation setting on the sub-oscillator, and there's actually a visual indicator on that. This little grill screen down inside of the tube design. I don't know if you'll be able to see it on the camera, but when I turn the saturation up, there's a little brightening to the screen within there. And it's just an interesting little feature. So this is with saturation up. I think it's sort of a richer sound with it up. And you can play with the cutoff to get a lot of different types of sounds with this setup. I think that's clipping. Let me turn it down a little. And so the filter can get quite squelchy. And then I should also note that there's a pitch setting over here, which is a continuous pitch change. Or you can set it at discrete note levels by pressing the function button. So this is the middle, 1 octave down, or 1 octave up. And then there are 2 oscillator waveform choices. As it is, it's drawn like a ramp shape, so sort of a backwards sawtooth, and so that sounds as you've been hearing. And then you can go to a square wave. It's kind of subtle, really. I'm going to turn the cutoff up. Let me turn the sub down and see if it's more distinct. So that's the saw. Okay, and as far as this middle part, you've seen the cutoff, the peak, the effect that they have, and attack and decay, but then you do have control over how much the envelope affects the cutoff frequency. As I mentioned, I'm going to just dial that back a little bit. So there are a lot of different effects you can get with that, but the thing I've been leaving out up to this point is the low frequency oscillator, and so you get to those by doing shift on these 2 knobs, and so you can turn up the intensity here, and then you can change the rate. I'm going to put them sort of in the middle, and it won't do anything yet. You can target any combination of the amplitude, so the volume coming out, the pitch, and the cutoff frequency. And so we can look at these one by one. Amplitude. Turn up the intensity on that. I hear it. There's also a nice feature to be able to sync the LFO, so I'm going to do that. That's cool. And then we can also try the pitch. I think I probably need to turn down the intensity. And then also the cutoff as a target. Which gives some of the classic wobble bass sounds. And then, so here's a combination of the envelope and the LFO going. And of course you can change the LFO from a triangle wave to a square wave, which gives some cool effects. And we can combine these LFO targets. And so here's a sound that I like a lot. A little bit more tweaking. Another cool sound. I feel like the NuBass can be really bubbly. I like the filter on it a lot. Some of the sounds almost kind of remind me of the soft pop synth from Classical Instruments. Then you can turn the LFO rate way up. I'm going to turn the intensity down. Let's go to the amp with that. Pitch and amp. Sort of a vibrato tremolo combo. There's another weird thing that happens when I hold the function button down. I don't think I'm pushing anything else. It tends to make it sort of freak out a little bit. I don't know what that is. Okay, so I hope this gives you an idea of some of the sounds that can come out of the Volca NuBass. Okay, so before I wrap this video up, I think it's worth talking about some of the features on the Volca Bass, the original one, that I think are really nice. And this might be particularly useful for somebody that doesn't have either one of these devices. And just to get it out there, the price point for the Volca NuBass is $200 and the original is now $150. And one of the strongest things about the Volca Bass is, think of this as sort of the same time period as the Volca Keys, which is a 3-note polyphonic synth. This is also 3-note polyphonic, but in a different way, where that you can sort of use it for, you have 3 oscillators that you can use for detuning to get a thicker sound, but you can also sequence those oscillators independently, and you can either do it as where they're all just sequenced as one, or you can do 2 of them sequenced together and the other one separate, or 3 separate ones. And so you're able to get some different types of sequence sounds that are pretty cool. It becomes sort of chord-like or sort of interwoven melodies, something like this. So I just did that a few minutes ago, not saying it's anything special, but just want you to hear the different threads going through there. And so that's one thing. Then another thing that I really do like about the original is the octave knob. And so with that, you can hit a note and change the octave. And there's a real sense of playability that can come from this. Let me put some decay to it. And I really like that. I feel like you can use it for different things like making sequences. It's a handy way to change the octave you're in, but it's also good for a live performative type thing. So, and so I feel like those features are a couple of the highlights of the Volca Bass and why I really like it. Okay, so here's sort of a confession, which is that while I do watch my fair share of synth YouTubers like Andrew Huang or Bo Beats or Ricky Tinez, Simon the Magpie, Look Mom No Computer, Heinbach, Carl Michael Bjork, and others, when I think I'm going to do some sort of video about something, I tend to just not watch anything about that particular thing. So it, I think, allows me to have kind of my own take on things, but it also kind of like sometimes leaves me a little bit bemused about stuff occasionally. And so this is sort of the first time that I've really felt like this, where it's like I felt, you know, with the NuBass, like, what have I really gotten into? I had in my mind what I kind of hoped it would be like, and now I see what it is like, and they do not align. Now, I am hopeful, because this thing can be updated, that some of the issues that I've mentioned can be addressed. But I don't want to just stop here. I do want, in the next video, now, not the next video, I'm still doing the Delta Waves ambient releases, so that'll be the next video. But the one after that, Undulations video, I'm going to come back to the NuBass, because there are a lot of things on it that are great about the sequencing. So it's got motion sequencing, which is really sort of become a standard cool part of using a Volca, but it's also got new things about randomizing parameters, and I feel like that it does some things that are really beyond whatever was possible with the original Volca Bass. And so that's sort of what you would expect. And I want to delve into that, and we'll see. Maybe I learn something between now and then, and it makes a little bit more sense to me. But as I am right now, I don't fully get it. And if you have any comment or advice, feel free to drop that down below. Now, one thing I do love the tubes, and I tend to just go for something that has sort of a scientific component to it, and this certainly does. And so with that in mind, maybe the best thing to do to close this one out is to talk about some science. So why don't we take a look at a very crude oscillator that you can make. And the reason that I'm doing this, okay, we have different types of oscillation sources, things like transistors, chips, even code. Something like the Microfreak has got code-based digital oscillators, different algorithms, and I'm gonna take us back to even before vacuum tubes to just a physical audio oscillator. And it's pretty nice. Take a look. Hope you enjoy it. Thanks a lot for watching. Okay, so this circuit is really simple. It's basically a single line of components. There's a penny here that's taped to a battery wire. It goes through the battery and then out the other battery wire, and then that goes through one of the speaker lines, and then the other speaker line comes out, and I've got that taped with conducting tape to the cone of the speaker. So if I complete the circuit by putting this penny on that piece of copper, you'll get a pop of the speaker. And you can already kind of hear a frequency there, and the place that that frequency is really coming from, it's sort of a mass and a spring. So there's the mass of the penny, but it's the spring coefficient of this wire. So if I come back on the wire a little bit, you can get a really low. And if I choke up on it, it will get higher. And so what's going on here, this is just an oscillation where I'm trying to complete the circuit, and the speaker is sending a pulse to the cone here and saying, nope, I don't want that penny on me, and it breaks the circuit. And then what that does is cause the penny to come back down and make contact again, and you get an oscillation that way. So lots of our devices like transistors, tubes, chips, it's all this sort of thing where that you have something that starts and then it sort of acts on itself and causes it to stop and then starts again. So it's a intuitive sort of thing, especially in a simple system like I've got here. So I'm going to add to that spring coefficient with this coffee stir. All right, this sounds like it needs some reverb.